This is AV SuperFriends On Topic, a 30-minute monthly roundtable focused on a single topic. This discussion will be opinionated, to the point, and saturated with our well-known blend of painfully won expertise and deeply ingrained immaturity. For November 2020, this is AV SuperFriends On Topic. So welcome back, everybody. This is episode 2 of the AV SuperFriends On Topic. My name is Chris Decter. I'm joined by Larry, Mark, Justin, Rachel, and Jamie. And this month's topic of conversation is lessons learned. And so I think the idea here is we kind of look back at our general approach to an interesting last 6 or 8 months and kind of see, did we do the right thing? Or things we want to do differently? How would we address that if we had the chance to do it all over again? However, before we get into that, one real quick note of self-promotion here. In addition to this show you're currently listening to, we do another podcast called AV SuperFriends Off the Rails. And it's longer in format. It's much more wider ranging. We're kind of all over the place. But it's with the same group of knuckleheads. So if you want to hear more of us shouting at each other on a wide variety of topics, head over to our website, avsuperfriends.com, or wherever great podcasts are found. You can find us on Amazon or iTunes or Spotify and all that good stuff. So subscribe to that. Give it a listen. I think you'll enjoy it. And we're always looking for feedback on your ideas that you'd like us to discuss on the show. So back to the topic at hand, lessons learned. We're going to we were discussing this ahead of time, kind of planning out how we want to address this. And I think we're going to take a slightly different bent to it. Rather than doing a lessons learned kind of a 2020 hindsight on specifically on technology or types of technologies. And I think we want to stay out of the weeds on what model camera did we buy or what DSP are we using, because really, that's going to be only relevant to us in this moment in time and not relevant to everybody. So I think we want to take a little more holistic approach. We want to see kind of let's take a step back and let's look at the wider scope of adjusting a general teaching space or the teaching experience to a mixed online and in-person, a hybrid model, if you will, and kind of see, it was the approach that we took at our respective institutions, was that the right approach? And, have we been successful? We're almost a full semester or a full quarter in. Has it been successful? Has there been some challenges? Are there things we wish, I really wish we would have reached out to this particular department, or wish we would have thought of that earlier, but, hey, it is what it is. Or have things gone relatively swimmingly? So, Mark, why don't we start with you? How are things at Oregon State?
Things at Oregon State, probably similar to a lot of other universities right now. Looking back, I think many, if not all of us listening to this show, all reacted. We did a lot of really good work. I think the standards that we all kind of have been classically trained towards over the years leading up to this put us in a position to be able to treat learning spaces with a common approach. And I think some version of cameras and microphones and configuration deployments happened ubiquitously for all universities, right? And what was in front of us was the classroom space. And I think we all worked really well and had a good treatment for those spaces. But I think looking back now, we're kind of looking at, what happened to the true student experience, right? So much of the importance was put on just that teaching and learning. And many students are being charged at the same rate that their entire college experience was, but it's been really distilled down to the traditional four-wall environment of the classroom, or now Zoom, Teams, whatever version of platform you're using, but there's kind of an experience deficit now, right? And so what are we going to do about the approaches for the additional experience outside of the classroom that students actually do or are expecting to do, whether it be social interactions, sporting events, things like that money they spent on their tuition is being spent towards, right? And so they're hoping to get a larger experience of not just this teaching and learning. So I think we did tons of really good work. We all reacted really well. We treated the learning space, but I think we have to take a step back now and say, okay, well, what are we going to do for the other non-educational spaces and experiences? And I think there's a lot of opportunity there to explore how those experiences may work. Virtualizing more common activities that are not just happening within the confines of the classroom. You're seeing a lot of feedback from students that want to see more than just teaching and learning delivery, spending their days in Zoom, because there's more to that college experience than just that. And we probably missed a little bit of the opportunity to explore outside the box opportunities there. And, like I said before, we all did a really good job at deployment and doing the physical installation work. And half of that was the fact that we were able to have a plan and do it, but we overlooked kind of the other experiences around college and kind of looking at different approaches that may add to those. And I think we're going to play catch up now at a lot of universities across the world, just kind of how do you backfill and create a more rounded student experience. And that's bigger than just the 4 classrooms. And it's going to be AV. It's going to be a lot of different pieces. I don't think it's going to be a silver bullet, but I think there's a lot of different ways that, that story will unfold. We're looking at different ways of e-gaming experiences and things like that kind of, how do we create more socialized opportunities that are not just kind of people hanging out in their dorms or hanging out at their home, in their bedroom, taking online classes. And so it's a new challenge. It's a little bit different for our traditional AV approaches, but I think there's, looking back, how do we keep that same enthusiasm that we did in our classroom spaces for maybe some of these non-classroom spaces? But, I don't want to speak for everybody, because I know, my experience here at OSU is a little bit different than maybe, say, Larry. But so Larry, what did you have that you kind of did?
Well, the one thing that has surprised me, I've walked around campus, watched classes in session, and talked to some of the instructors. Primarily here at UNCG, we've adopted the high flex. Monday, Wednesday, Friday, a portion of the class comes to class each day. Instructors are telling me that students are choosing to just take their day they're supposed to be in class and stay in their dorm room or at home and watch the session. And so I'm real curious, what part of the student experience are we missing? Because it seems like they view the online as being more valuable for their time than the in-person class experience. And the only thing I keep coming back to, and I'm really bad at staying in my lane as a technology person, I'm constantly trying to better understand the pedagogical side of this, is that there are ways of being really effective teachers virtually, and there's ways of being really effective teachers in person. And I'm sure at some point someone will figure out how to be a really effective teacher in a high flex environment. But I'm just worried that we haven't invested enough in that aspect. And so what we're getting is the lowest common denominator between a virtual class and an in-person class. And that suits virtual learning better than it does in person. And so we haven't been...
I think there's a...
Yeah, Jamie?
Yeah, no, I think there's a lot of truth to that. I really do. And I think a lot of what we're seeing with the students is not that they don't want to go to the class. I think a lot of them say, hey, I would rather go to class. I would rather have that in-person experience. However, what they're finding is that in these high flex, these hybrids, these whatever the hell you're calling it today, models, is that the instructor is now overwhelmed to a point where they're not as effective. Therefore, the in-person experience is really no like than the at-home experience. And so why the hell? I mean, why? And especially, like in the Midwest, right? Especially in the next couple of weeks, it's going to hit 0. We're going to have snow. You're like, what the? Yeah. Screw that. I'm not walking across campus and in our 2 inches of snow. It's cold. So I'll just stay in my room.
We were all so sure that given the opportunity, everybody was going to come back to class and be around people because we all miss people so much. And I think that we're battling some of our own preconceptions and the preconceptions of our faculty here, because we know that the way people learn is generally quantified by the 20-10-70 model. Right? You learn 10% in class, you learn 20% from your peers, and you learn 70% from your experiences. And we just we're making this assumption that those experiences and that peer-to-peer learning had to take place in person for it to be valuable. But we're dealing with a generation of general natives that doesn't think that, or of digital natives that doesn't think that way, that is perfectly happy to do that peer-to-peer learning and to have those experiences in an online environment if, as Mark suggested, we're willing to invest in that for them. We're willing to build that virtual environment. I also think...
And I think...
go ahead.
I think universities have been struggling with some of that too, is that they've never really, a lot of them, many of the ones I've worked at, we'll put it that way, have never really embraced the online student in this regard. So what Mark was saying in the holistic approach of how do you do these things. For instance, I have a student in my house, right? She's all online. She has been for 2 years. And they still charge her rec center fees. Mm-hmm. They charge her health center fees. They just treat her like every other student. And she's like, I live 425 miles from your campus.
Yeah.
Stop charging me.
That's nutty.
Like, I get technology fees. I get this. I get that. I get this. And I think students right now are saying the same thing. Like, well, I'm on campus, but I can't use the campus movie theater. I can't use the campus rec center. I can't use the campus cafeteria. So... start discounting some things. Now, granted, we all understand that there's money for food, there's money for electricity, right? But I think schools and colleges have really struggled with this holistic approach of online student experience compared to in-person student experience. And now, just like everything else in our world, it's just been like, oh crap, now everybody sees it. You know, they pulled the blanket off the bed and now you can see that they're dirty sheets.
Well, and I don't think it necessarily has to be about discounts either. Like I think Larry said something brilliant earlier when he was like, there are different the way to
stop it.
He said a couple of things that I think were brilliant, but like there's a way to teach really well virtually and there's a way to teach really well in person, and they are different approaches. And I think like the flip side of that coin is there is a student for whom online class is better, for whom online class is more valuable. They don't need a discount. They're actually getting a premium service when they're enrolled in an online course, as long as the service that they're getting is paired with that appropriate virtual learning pedagogy, right? Like you should, if you have the right online environment, you have the right virtual teaching pedagogy, and you have the students who want that service and who view it as a premium service long term, then you don't need to charge those people a discount. They're actually getting what they want. I think that we just need to think about that as a completely separate business model. Like we've been so focused on innovating our spaces, we have to innovate our business model for higher education.
We moved so fast, and like normally we would never be able to do what we did. 6 years of forward progress in 6 months, or whatever number you want to put on that, and we kind of let the genie out of the bottle really fast. Typically, we wouldn't offer an actual product being this hybrid experience without all the models and all the financial stuff and everything like that. So we just did it, right? And then we kind of conformed it to fit in our existing models. And I think right now our real struggle is that we're trying to fit high flex and convenience into our typical confines of 9 to 5. And things like that. Why are we scheduling classes that way? Why do we schedule a class because it's at 10 o'clock in the morning versus whenever it is? Because that's what we've traditionally done. We're bending things to fit our traditional model, where really we should say, okay, here's everybody interested in this class. Send them a poll. When do you want to have it? Right? Stop making people have to be at a certain time in a certain place, because we don't need to anymore. Right? And I think
we're
all the
still
work we're
applying
doing,
in-person thinking to remote education.
We don't need to think that way. We're out of that agricultural kind of society. We don't need the 9 to 5 workday. We can be completely flexible, and I think there's the opportunity. I don't even need to be at OSU. I don't need to be at Western Kentucky. I'm envisioning a world where there's a consortium where you want to take a class at Western Kentucky, Oregon State, Indiana. Guess what? It's kind of like the skiing, snowboarding season pass, the Epic Pass, where I can take a class here, class there, and as long as we all have the same standard delivery platform, doesn't matter where I'm actually enrolled. We can start having multi-university degrees, and I think that's where we want to get to. And right now we're kind of trying to just preserve our economics and kind of just keep classes afloat. And I think we got to kind of get outside of that thinking.
I look forward to everyone
for
being
instance,
a part of like the Amazon Prime University, and you pay your monthly fee to take classes or whatever the heck. That's what's going to happen. It's going to get commoditized. And I remember this conversation 20 some years ago where we were talking about why when I do a video conference class, why is the subject matter expert have to be somebody at this institution? Why isn't it taught by, I mean, you can bring in experts from anywhere, but why isn't it taught by somebody else? And you go find the best person in the world at this particular topic, and that's the person who's teaching. And why is it also, to your point, Mark, about the timing, why is it artificially limited to some, to 30 or 40 or 60 students? I mean, we've had MOOCs, these massive online classes where you have thousands of people in there, and there's kind of structures for that. So I think we're going to start to see that kind of wedge its way into the traditional, for lack of a better term, higher ed model. So it'll be interesting times to see how that kind of flips around. But there's a lot of different models for that.
I do start to get alarmed by that, though, because I do think that the limits on class size are not artificial. That when it's a lecture, sure, that's an artificial limit. But when it's anything else, there are real limits on the number of people who can have a valuable experience together.
Yeah, like
whether it's in person or online.
The way these MOOCs work is they'll have like a massive, the information dump session is thousands of people. Then there's the smaller breakout seminar sessions and whatnot. So yes, that's the same thing. I remember taking Chemistry 100 as a freshman at Ohio State, and there was, I think, 550 people in this auditorium. It's like, well, how the heck am I supposed to really have some sort of connection with the person who, by the way, is this little tiny guy down on the stage there sort of thing? And and it was
using the whiteboard.
Well, no, he was using the overhead, and one of the books for the course was to purchase his notes ahead of time. So you had all his notes, and it was like, well, why am I going to class then, sort of thing? And and it's like, well, the idea is you take notes on the notes and et cetera, et cetera. But a lot of that material was kind of already extracted from that actual teaching session. So I think we're seeing similar things where we're extracting the information and making it available in other modalities. So it's not something that I must be at this building at this time in this place to get the information. There's other ways for me to get it. And there's a lot of different methods, and kind of all wedged into this hybrid name right now that I think Jamie pointed out is like means something different to everybody.
I mean, what we're really talking about here is trying to figure out the balance between, somebody that just wants to online learn and pay X fee for a credit course versus somebody like me who would have, if I had the opportunity, went to college, stayed in a dorm, and not actually went to class and did online learning and got the college experience, right? So something that we do is we charge more per credit hour for an online class historically, is the way it's been. And it was a convenience fee. Yep. And so if you're on campus, your credit hour going to class is less than if you were sitting at home or going to a regional campus, because we have regional campuses here in Kentucky. So the idea is for someone who lives 3 hours away to not have to drive 3 hours to this campus, they would have to drive a half hour or an hour and go to.
I thought you said they were going to charge more the farther away they were from campus.
And we might look into that. That might be something, Mark, if you charge by the course, we'll charge you $5,000 per credit minute. No big deal.
But think about the opportunities for like smaller schools, though, that maybe they can get in and capture some of that shared revenue. That, hey, I don't have a biology department. We have students here that want to have that. Maybe it's a smaller institution or things that are community colleges, or hell, it could be a K-12, right? You want to take some online. Think about the added enrollment advantage to some of those smaller institutions being able to capture some of those students as well, or offer those opportunities for their students.
I think the holdup here really is it is the faculty and the administration of higher ed, right? Kids are already ready for this. When they want to learn something, what do? They go to YouTube. What do they do? They go look it up themselves. They learn it and they figure it out themselves. They're already ready for this classroom of convenience, of I can hyper focus on whatever I want. And I can have my own little groups, and I can make my own little Discord, and I can do these things. And at any time I want, not when somebody else tells me to. So a lot of times, I do believe right now this may be that push. Just like Larry was saying earlier, this may be that push that for those teachers that embrace that the fastest will see their value increase.
Well, and I think even more than the instructors, although the instructors are a big part of it, there's the educational designers, there's the universities themselves. We have every university trying to get to that direction. And then we have universities like Western Governors University who have been doing this for 10 years and aren't trying to shoehorn a classroom experience online. They've developed their curriculum around the best way of teaching online. And until we buy into that it's a different experience and we need to address it differently, we're going to struggle.
Larry, you raise an interesting point. I think a lot of people here are listening are thinking only from a technology standpoint. And I think early on when we started into this, everyone focused on technology, and maybe some construction, though I hope you didn't build new buildings based on this, because they're going to be terrible if you did them in 4 months. But I think the focus was so heavy on technology, I think that a lot of us overlooked the pedagogy side. We overlooked the instructional design. And for those of you listening who haven't, find out where your instructional designers are. Go make friends with them, because it's one of those things where, like, should pedagogy be our business, or do we need to make it our business? And it sounds like probably a little bit of both. You need to kind of be aware of that, and find out who those instructional designers are at your institution. Work with them on kind of what a classroom is. Go listen to our other podcast, Off the Rails, for discussion of what a classroom is. And work with your instructional designers to determine what the pedagogy for that classroom space might be, whether it's physical or virtual, hybrid, whatever, and get to know your instructional design department. I think that will improve your learning space in the larger sense, capital L, capital S. In the larger sense of it, it'll improve the learning space in general. So,
yeah,
in fact,
that's
Mark,
exactly
don't you have something on that?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I think when kind of looking at it, this is a much larger conversation, obviously, and it's going to span many shows, many episodes. But we started kind of kicking that around a little bit here on version of this show, that it's the crossroads conversation where that technology and that pedagogy meet, and who are the professionals on that, right? And so I think we're going to kind of start some more of that conversation as soon as next week on the Off the Rails show, that we're going to start bringing in some more of those pedagogical kind of professionals and people who may have seen different iterations of online learning versus kind of hybrid, and different versions that exist of that and how it's been done. Because let's face it, it's not new what we're doing, and the scale that we're doing it is definitely much larger than we have. So next week, we're going to actually have our first guest here on the Off the Rails show, that we're going to kind of dive in it and start some of this crossroads conversation. And it may be a little bit of historic context to it, of kind of where it came from. But for those that are interested in kind of hanging out and listening to that conversation next week, we'll dive in with John Robolo from Oregon State. And he was part of eCampus or did some eCampus online, and has lots of different studies and some data around student responses and pieces that are really around that experience, and some really up-to-date data around student experience in light of kind of COVID, and what they're saying and where they see some of that deficit may be, and what they're actually asking for and what they'd like to see, and what the instructor view of that may be. So, but I believe now we probably want to take a couple minutes, let everybody get a drink of water, take a quick break, and we'll come back on the other side.
Believe it or not, this show is actually as disciplined as we get when talking about our industry. If you'd like to hear more, let's say, unfiltered content from the AV SuperFriends, then head over to avsuperfriends.com and check out our other show, Off the Rails. Join Chris, Mark, Justin, Larry, Rachel, and I as we dig into the different aspects of higher ed AV. We'll also chat about pedagogy, swoon over the shiny new gadgets, and see what other interesting topics we pull out of the mailbag. That's Off the Rails, and found on our website at avsuperfriends.com.
Welcome back. So, thinking about the future and what this all means is, at WKU, we're trying to figure out exactly what this means for us. Are we going to start teaching remotely to thousands and thousands and thousands of students across the nation? Are we going to go back to in-person learning only? Committees are being formed that haven't been formed before, which means good conversations are happening. And so if you're wondering, well, how the hell do I get in touch with my instructional designers? Who are they? Something that I noticed at WKU is they're sending out massive trainings all the time, right? Links to trainings. Well, I'm a staff member, and I saw that, so I just signed up for one. And the one I signed up for yesterday or the day before was how to teach in a high flex environment. So, oh, perfect. Let's see what they're talking about, because that's going to help me design for what their needs are. And this isn't going to be solved in one training. This is an ongoing thing I'm going to start doing, is just getting involved with these trainings. And they started talking about entrance tickets and exit tickets, on ways that students can recall information. And one of the experts that was speaking was talking about, throwing out some softball questions to the students, letting them kind of answer while he's setting up his microphones and levels and different things like that, which questioned me, well, what room are you teaching in? But that's a different subject. So, these are things that are going to start to change how AV designers think and how we interact with our clients. So be thinking about ways to engage those instructional designers, and I approach them. I'm not here to tell you what I do or what we've done. I'm here to listen and learn about what you're talking about. And I think just by approaching it in that manner really gain some buy-in from those faculty. Like, oh, this guy actually cares about what we're talking about, right? So that's one way to bridge those communication gaps. Jamie, I know you had something to add to that.
I think that's right. Yeah, I think that's right on. I think it's one of those things that we're going to continue to harp on for, years, as long as we do this and as long as you've listened to us, is that relationship between your instructional design people, the teachers that teach the teachers, right? And us as the AV nerds. We're used to using gadgets, and we find really cool gadgets. We're like, you need to use this because it's awesome and it's the best.
Well, why, right?
And here's your microphone, and these folks, they just, sometimes that's not their thing. But we get that relationship, and now we know what they're telling people and what we're telling people, and it all kind of ties together. And then back to the all-encompassing question of what can we do campus-wide, because a lot of us have responsibilities, as Mark said, in esports or with the sports, the live sports. Well, guess what? We can't do live sports right now, but how can we make that work? Mm-hmm. How can we make intramurals work? How can we do this? What can we do? So as you start looking at the bigger thing and what you can bring to the table, understanding what they're trying to do, and sometimes they don't even know.
Yeah.
Or they don't know how to explain it to you, right? They maybe know what they're talking about, but they don't know how to articulate that.
Yeah, I don't know what I don't know.
And one of the recent anecdotes I have about that, just real quick, is that we have the local league, right? The local indoor leagues, and only one parent can go in the building, right, with the kids to watch their thing. Well, they have high-speed internet. They have all this stuff. I'm like, why don't you throw up a couple of cameras and just have an all-day YouTube stream from Field 4, and then Grandma and Grandpa and brothers and sisters and all the other people from all over the damn planet can log into it, and they can watch their little Johnny and little Susie play their whatever sport.
And you can charge by the mile the farther away they are.
Yeah, convenience fee.
And it doesn't cost you anything, right? It doesn't really. I mean, it costs you the infrastructure, and then you start getting questions like, we can do that? Mm-hmm. Well, how much is it? Well, it's like $1,000. Oh. And next thing you know, you've added value. Well, our job has added value to whatever it is. But I think that's really important, that we need to know what those people are trying to do, and we can bring our value.
Yeah,
to
I think that's
challenge
critical.
Everybody.
And
go take a class. Right?
Yes,
go experience
watch
something.
them
go
do
actually
it.
do it. Like,
because if you ask them, like, what are you doing? What do you need? What do you need help with? What's not working for you? Nobody knows, because they don't know what's
possible. Show up
possible.
at a class. Just show up at a class.
Yeah.
I've done that before.
Hey, they don't know who their students are anyway, so.
No, they, just show up and say, hey, I'm auditing. Like, I just showed up today. No big deal, right?
Well, it's different to just be there physically, but I would say if you can, find a professional development opportunity that's a multi-day training or some, not just a webinar. Like, go experience as a true student in the LMS and experience what it really is to be on the far side of that, because it will change your whole perspective on what's going on in the classroom. Because I took one late last year, and I felt like I was just swimming in the complete froth of waves. I have no idea. I couldn't tell which way is up or down. I'm like, students are actually experiencing this. This is crazy. And it changed my perspective on kind of technology integration into a classroom and how that spills onto the network. And it was an eye-opening experience, to say the least.
Yeah. And Larry said, screw it, I'm just going to get the whole damn degree. No?
Not yet, but soon, hopefully.
So, well, let's we draw this to a close. We do want to stay on time here and be respectful of everybody's time. I think, as you've seen, what might have started out as kind of like a AV conversation of, what audio processor do we install in a room is really a larger conversation, multifaceted, involving multiple groups on campus. And, everyone's got a different organization at their campus who handles the instructional design aspect or handles the excellence in teaching and learning or whatever the group is called. Find out who that is, make friends with them, take some of those classes, sit in on some of those trainings. They may not know exactly how to articulate things in our language and vice versa, and find out what instructors and what professors are trying to do and try to figure out a way to kind of provide that solution for them rather than just, I put in a camera with a better zoom. What do you want? That may be solving the need, but not necessarily addressing the issue. So lots to look at there. Much more to come on this. For those of you interested in this particular conversation on the mix of technology and pedagogy, please join us on our other show, AV SuperFriends Off the Rails. And this is going to be a multi-episode series. We're going to bring in some experts from all our institutions and others, and we're going to talk through this in depth to really kind of get at the meat of the matter. How do we improve AV and pedagogy and technology and the whole university and online hybrid in-class teaching experience? That whole mess of things, we're going to look at all of that. So in the meantime, let's take a quick break. Do you have a question for the AV Super Friends, a topic to suggest, or were we just really, really wrong on something and you'd like to give us a piece of your mind? Well, don't just yell at your computer. Send us an email and we'll actually read it. Mailbag@avsuperfriends.com. We're always looking for good ideas to steal, discuss openly. And if your message is just full of great stuff, we might just invite you on the show. Mailbag@avsuperfriends.com.
All right, welcome back, guys. Before we close out for the day, we've got our lightning round question, which is looking back on what we did for COVID as we transition to hybrid, high flex, UCC, etc. Where is the right place to start? A or V or both? Audio, video, both at the same time, something else? Chris, you first.
Neither. My first thought is audio, but no, start with content. Start with your content. It'll build from there. The rest will find it.
Well, that answer was too smart. I'm not letting you go first next time. Mark, you first.
Very similar, but I think we focused on content because that was our lecture capture kind of primary piece, and then the audio layered in on top of that. And our first knee-jerk reaction was, how do I get really quick USB microphones in classrooms? And then we kind of built off of that, the audio experience.
Justin.
Yeah.
So normally we start with audio unless it's a sign language class. And that's not me being a smartass. We have a program. So sign language class, you have to have video. So it depends on your content, right? I mean, it depends on what you're trying to do. So really both is my answer, I guess. We're
going to let you have it. The judges are going to say,
Larry?
We started with blank slate, so I did both, but I was wrong. As I start round two, the priority is on audio.
And Jamie?
I was going to say, all you guys copped out. You're like, politician answer is answer with a question that wasn't in the question.
Season for that.
Content.
Tis the season.
We're AV nerds. Audio. We wanted to make sure all the words were heard, knowing that they were trying to lecture to a group of people, and then we put in video. So audio came first. The assumption was content was always going to be awesome. We just wanted to hear
Unless it's sign language class, right? It's sign language.
And that assumption generally is wrong, by the way. Usually the content's just here's a PowerPoint slide.
Shut up.
But
I don't know.
But you're right.
This was
Audio is
lightning
absolutely the
there.
place to start. So start with audio, but get the content figured out.
So what we're saying is essentially A before V, except after
C.
It's a diaper. It depends. It's a diaper.
Guys, we have mic drop. That's it. We're done.
We're done.
Peace out.
See you next month, everyone. Thanks for putting up with yet another episode of AV SuperFriends On Topic. You can contact us with questions, topic ideas, or general complaints at avsuperfriends.com.
Ooh. Nice work, everyone. Sharp broadcast. Really good. Everyone on the floor as well. Really a lot of hustle. I liked it.
The opinions expressed by the AV SuperFriends are solely those of the individuals and do not represent their respective institutions, organizations, companies, or clients.